Dear students, I am Dr. Ravinder Kaur Chima, Assistant Professor in the subject of History at Guru Nanak Khalsa College, Mumbai. Students, I will be discussing with you the first part of Unit 4 of your paper, 19th Century Maharashtra. The first part is titled as Resistance and Resurrections in 19th Century Maharashtra. The topic consists of the uprising or the revolt by the various tribal groups of Maharashtra such as Ramoshis, Bhils and Mahadev Koli. The topic further deals with the revolt of Vasudev Balwant Phadke against the British rule. And finally, the peasants' unrest will be discussed. The discussion on the above topics will help you all to understand the origin and growth of tribal movements in different parts of Maharashtra and also the role of its leaders in these movements. Let us first begin with the introduction and understand the background which led to the resistance and resurrection in 19th century Maharashtra. Students, what do we understand by resistance and resurrection? Resistance is basically a fight, battle, or confrontation against the oppression or oppressive policies. It means we actually oppose to certain impositions that affect our growth, development, and actually our existence. We fight against this to recover or revive or improve our condition and restore back our dignity and integrity, and that is resurrection. So when we look at 19th century Maharashtra, we know that we were ruled by the Britishers. The 19th century Maharashtra witnessed the growth and development in fields such as agriculture, trade, and overall administration. The English education in India created an elite class that worked towards reforming the society. Introduction of new means of technology and transport built new communication links such as railways between Bombay and Kalyan, which led to the development of urban centers. The rural areas went through difficult times, facing pressure of land laws and oppressive judicial system. The Industrial Revolution in England led to the flooding of Indian markets with foreign machines, man-made goods, thus leaving the future of the Indian rural artisans in bleak. The village artisans became unemployed and were forced to move towards agricultural activities, which increased pressure on agriculture, making it overcrowded and inefficient. The self-sufficient economic structure was disrupted, leading to hardships in the agrarian setup. It was rightly remarked that the British rule aimed to change drastically the social fabric of Indian agriculture. The finances or the capital needed for the development of agriculture was siphoned off and the level of total output tended towards stagnation. The tribals all over the country were the most affected by the British policies and so launched armed revolt against the British oppressive domination. Tribal revolts were witnessed in Beed, Nanded, Bijapur and Belgaum, though the British later successfully suppressed such revolts. This probably was because the tribals did not receive much sympathy and support from the elite class. In Maharashtra, the tribals that expressed their discontent against the British were the Bhils of Khandesh, Ramoshis of Pune and Satara, and the Mahadev Kolis of Akola, Ahmednagar, Nashik and Thane. Students, please note that in further discussion, Mahadev Kolis will be referred to as only Koli. What really outraged the tribals were the new British policies of removal of tribals from the government jobs, capturing their watans and the introductions of the new forest laws that led to the insecurity of the tribals. Though in the tribal system, the land belonged to the village community, its property rights were given to a limited number of persons as per the new British laws. The peasants and the craftsmen too were faced the brunt of the British policies as they lost their control over their lands and were burdened with heavy taxes under the revenue system. Also, the government's prohibition policy of illegal distillation operated harshly on the primitive people as liquor was a necessity in marriages and other tribal ceremonies. This led to the decay of rites and rituals and also added to the depression of the tribes. However, the resistance and resurrection by the tribals and peasants were managed with high-handedness by the British rule. The movements were able to attract attention of the new middle class arising in the society. These revolts also did inspire some nationalistic individuals who highlighted the role of British rule towards the decline in socio-cultural setup of India. Individuals such as Vasudev Balwant Phadke directly took the lead in revolting against the British policies. The tribals were dislocated and therefore their discontent led to their insurgency. Now let us discuss and understand the uprising by the Ramoshis, Bhils, Kolis and the peasants in different parts of Maharashtra. Firstly, the uprising by Ramoshis. Ramoshi, a forest tribe, originally migrated from Telangana into Maharashtra and settled in the hilly tracts of Pune and Satara district. During the reign of Shivaji, the Ramoshis were recruited as soldiers. With the end of the Maratha rule in 1818, the British took over the Maratha region and appointed them as village watchmen in the village administration and in return received watans for themselves. All Ramoshis were not accommodated in the British administration and therefore the Ramoshis and many other Marathas became unemployed. Ramoshis were unhappy and not prepared to reconcile with the British rule. They joined Chatur Singh in his rebellion against the British and from 1823 to 1826 created disorder by plundering and acts of violence. Under the leadership of Umaji Naik, they restored to express their anger upon those who showed their elegance towards the British. Umaji Naik, along with his followers, had actually set up a principality in the jungle and started extracting tribute from the villages in Pune and Satara. They helped the poor and the needy. By 1828, the revolt of Ramoshis reached the peak, demanding the restoration of the watans and their rights that they enjoyed under the earlier rulers. The government was unable to suppress Umaji's rebellion and offered for peace agreement. However, Umaji was prepared to agree only under the conditions of restoration of the rights and watans of the Ramoshis. He threatened the government, stating that if it did not agree, quote unquote, 1,000 rebellions would arise and ransack the whole country. This was a threatening to the Britishers from Umaji Naik. The devastation from Ratnagiri to Satara, Vai and Kolhapur continued and the government failed to curb the rebellion. It was in 1829 that Umaji Naik accepted the offer for peace by the government. In return, the Ramoshis received land grants and were recruited as hill police. Besides this, Umaji was also granted 120 bighas of land. Peace unfortunately did not last longer and the uprising was recharged by Umaji. This gave rise to skirmishes between Ramoshis and the British forces under Captain Mackintosh, who was successful in capturing Umaji Naik in December 1830. He was later persecuted and hanged. Umaji Naik earned great respect among the Ramoshis and other villagers. The Bombay Gazetteer, paying tribute to his valor, stated, quote unquote, "The singular adventures of this man who, but for the English, might have become a second Shivaji, are worth perusal." Umaji's contribution in support of Ramoshis and other villagers inspired the Kolis of the hilly regions of Pune and Ahmednagar to revolt. The Ramoshis did not stop and continued attacking and looting the dominant moneylenders, and this troubled the British authorities. As stated by the administrative reports of Bombay Presidency for 1879-1880, there occurred 161 dacoities in that year, out of which 52 dacoities were conducted by the organized gang, namely Ramoshis, Kolis and others. Hari Makaji led the gang of Ramoshis of Satara district and his brother Tatya Makaji moved from Pune to Sholapur conducting 13 dacoities. Commenting on the dacoities, the Sarvajanik Sabha concluded that majority of the accused were wholly or partly agriculturists. They did so as they were forced to resort to these actions in absence of other sources of livelihood. It must be noted here that Vasudev Balwant Phadke was also amongst the earliest revolutionaries to raise an armed insurrection against the British rule. Phadke organized the Ramoshis of Pune and Satara district to raise an army of fighters. He guided them and motivated them to help him in his raids on moneylenders and rich persons. The villagers too helped him in this endeavor. Thus, the Ramoshis struggled to make their earnings as the British policies had closed all opportunities for them. These were the reasons why the Ramoshis revolted against the British rule in the region of Maharashtra. Now we move on to the next uprising, and that is the Bhil uprising. The Bhils were predatory people settled in the Western Ghats, maintaining their stronghold in Khandesh. The mountain passes between the north and the Deccan were controlled by the Bhils, and in the countryside they peacefully stayed as cultivators and landlords. According to the Bombay government reports, the Bhil settlements worked in tranquility and districts were free from crime. The cultivation in the settlements increased considerably, but still there were disturbances noticed at some places in Bhil tract. In the hilly areas, they survived on the plunder of the rich landholders of the neighborhood. The reason for their unrest was their exploitation by the Marathas and others, and they also suffered due to the famine of 1802 to 1804. The Bhils of Khandesh continuously troubled the government even after their acquisition of Khandesh. In 1817, the Bhil rebellion broke out in Khandesh. The British government pressurized Peshwa Bajirao II to arrest the culprit. At this juncture, the Bhils turned anti-British and rose in revolt against them. They disobeyed all laws and did not recognize the new British authority. The conciliatory schemes were unsuccessful. The government of Bombay used severe military action against them and also used legal conciliatory measures to control the Bhil rebellion. A blacksmith by the name of Sevagram convinced the Bhils of Baglan to rise against the forgery of letters written by Raja of Satara. The village Patil too supported the Bhils in this regard, and the military measures failed to control. The insurrections and devastation by the Bhils spread on all sides and the neighboring areas also. Vigorous military tactics by the British were not effective, and so the trouble continued. At this juncture, the government planned a new tactics to win the confidence of the Bhils by inducting a section of them into the military services. The British were successful at crushing the disturbances of the Bhils and converting them into peaceful cultivators. Immunity was granted for past offences and land was granted to them for cultivation. By 1828, Bhil menace was much controlled. The government used the Bhil Corps to subdue the Ramoshis and Dang rebellion. The government reports stated that 600 families were settled in agriculture alone. In 1839, again, the Bhils created disturbances but were repressed. In 1840, Raja Pratap Singh of Amli in the South Dangs offered their allegiance to the British government and permitted his followers to loot the British villages. In 1841, a large group of Bhils from Ahmednagar plundered the government treasury at Pimpalner but were persuaded by the Bhil Corps and the booty was returned. It was during the same times that Bhamnia Naik, along with his Bhil followers, raised an open rebellion and attacked a village in Sultanpur subdivision. In the counter-attack by the government, Naik was killed and the followers were captured. In the following year too, Tadvi Bhils under the leadership of Bekaria and Bhagchand raided Savada and Yaval. The Bhil agents of the British government exhibited too much of interference into the affairs of the Bhil chief of Chikli, and so in 1846 he protested against the Bhil agent. The government dispatched a brigade against the Bhil chief, and after strong resistance and bloody encounter, he was captured and imprisoned. However, these conciliatory and reformatory measures did not completely cease the Bhil trouble. From time to time, up to 1846, the Bhils raised their heads in revolt against the government. Many of the Bhil leaders were either killed or captured, and their settlements too was destroyed. But by 1853, it was observed that a new generation of Bhils was coming up, among whom the lawlessness and violence of their tribes were just mere traditions. The Bhil aggression in Maharashtra continued while the revolt of 1857 spread in the north. About 1500 Bhils under Bhagoji Naik and Kaja Singh raided and looted Sirpur, and after closing the Sindhwa Pass, raided the villages at its foothills. The Bhils also secretly received aid from the chief of Barwani in Malwa and the Arabs in their loot of government treasure, which was carried from Indore to Bombay. Though in the skirmish between the army and the Bhils, both suffered heavy losses, they gathered in large number at Nandgaon in Ahmednagar district to encounter the forces. Kaja Singh was caught due to treachery by his own men. The Bhils on the borders of Ahmednagar and Nasik districts were joined by Thakurs, Rohilas and Arabs, which constituted a force of about 7,000 men and revolted under the leadership of Bhagoji Naik. The Brahmins from the region of Trimbakeshwar too were in the lead in the rebellion and helped in looting the Trimbak treasury in 1857. Several such skirmishes continued up to 1859. Students, it must be noted that in all, the Bhil uprising, the Bhil Corps, which was the creation of the British government, remained loyal to the British in crushing the insurgents. Dadoba Pandurang, while describing his journey in the Bhil territory, mentions about the Bhil Corps and admires the shrewd tactics of the British of employing thieves to put down the thieves, to pluck the thorn with the aid of a thorn. These were the tactics of the English used against the Bhil Corps in Maharashtra. We move on to the next uprising in Maharashtra. It is the Koli uprisings. The Kolis were by nature an aggressive and a fighting race, and therefore in the pre-British times they were employed to safeguard the hill forts. They mainly resided in the region of Thane district and other areas of Sahyadri region, scattered from borders of Kutch to the Western Ghats. So what led to their discontent? It was when the British took over the Maratha region and dismantled the forts, leaving the Kolis unemployed, thus leading to their discontent. It was in 1828 that the Kolis revolted against this action of the British and became the cause of their frequent revolts. The Kolis were inspired by the leaders of the Ramoshis, Umaji Naik, and the Kolis of Pune and Ahmednagar also revolted in 1830s. The Kolis under the leadership of Ramji Bungeria and many others revolted aggressively, and the British had to send large troops in the Konkan and Sahyadri against them. In 1839, bands of Kolis rose in rebellion in parts of Sahyadri and attacked and robbed several villages. The Kolis were joined by people from all castes of the Maratha region, and their strength rose to nearly 400. Bhau Khare, Chimaji Jadhav and Nana Darbare took the charge of Peshwa administration and declared their governance in the name of the Peshwa. Both R.C. Majumdar and S.B. Chaudhary stated that these leaders who led the Kolis were Brahmins and had a planned political interest. As the Pune garrison was reduced, they set out to raid the Mahalkari's treasure at Ghod in Pune division, but were not successful, as Mr. Rose, the assistant collector of Pune, with the support of local population, counter-attacked the insurgents and besieged the town. The superintendent of police combated the situation successfully. Many rebels were imprisoned, and 54 of them were tried and punished under various terms, of which some were hanged, namely Ramchandra Gore, who was a Brahmin. However, the Kolis did not remain silent for a longer time. They again reorganized themselves in 1844 under the leadership of two brothers, Raghu Bhangre and Bapu Bhangre. They operated from their headquarters in the countryside to the northwest of Pune. They attacked the rich people from several villages and intentionally did not harm the common villagers. The police did counter them on a number of occasions. Once, the gang of Raghu Bhangre attacked the police force in the hills at night and killed a police officer and several constables. In 1845, the Koli uprising spread havoc in the regions of Purandar and Satara. With the help of the government, the situation was brought under control by the Pune police force that was successful in capturing Bapu Bhangre. Nevertheless, the activities by the rebels continued as they received support of the villages in looting the rich. The rebellion became stronger when they were joined by a Gavli, that is a cowherd, named Khema, and Umaji Naik's son named Tukya and Mankla, along with their men in Purandar Taluka. The rebels controlled the Malsej and Nane passes, and the British troops too kept a strict check on the passes. Nasik and Ahmednagar districts were also affected by the activities of Raghuji Bhangre. The rich Marwadis were raided in Ahmednagar and were also punished by rebels for asking police protection from the government. Finally, Raghuji was caught by the police at Pandharpur in January 1848 and was hanged. Tuka and Mankla also were captured by the police in April 1850. With this ended the long uprising of the Kolis. It is significant to note that the Kolis rebellion troubled the British rule, and it took nearly 20 years to bring down the Koli rebellion, which happened by 1850. But again, in 1873, the hill tribes of Western Pune and Ahmednagar rose in arms against the moneylenders of the region, and their revolt this time was not against the British government. It was under the leadership of Honia, an influential Koli chief who had a well-trained gang. A series of attacks were conducted and moneylenders were robbed and assaulted. Terror was created by this group, which forced the moneylenders to leave the region. In 1876, Honia was caught by Major Daniel, the superintendent of police, and it is believed that Honia's activities inspired the Kunbis to rise up in revenge against the Marwadi moneylenders, which indirectly continued the spirit of the revolt. Students, it must be noted that during the rebellion of Vasudev Balwant Phadke in 1879, the Kolis of Pune district were led by Krishna Sable and his son Maruti Sable, who raged in anger as they had lost their lands due to the moneylenders and forest laws. They spread terror by conducting 28 dacoities in 7 months. Finally, the government arrested their leaders and the gangs disappeared. Some regions of Maharashtra, particularly Pune, Ahmednagar and others, by 1850 suffered through many insurgencies that disturbed the socio-economic setup of the region, and at the times the British government faced difficulties in crushing these rebellions. However, the other parts of Maharashtra did have a phase of economic and educational development. Now we move on to another very important aspect and a very important personality whose contribution is remarkable in the region of Maharashtra, Vasudev Balwant Phadke. We will be now discussing the revolt of Vasudev Balwant Phadke. Vasudev Balwant Phadke, a patriot and a revolutionary, was born in 1845 in Shirdhorn village in Kolaba district. His forefathers worked under the Peshwas. He did his schooling at Kalyan and Bombay, and having fair knowledge of English, he worked as a clerk in the GIP Railways and the Grant Medical College. He also was well trained in horse riding and learnt the art of using weapons. Later, in 1865, he joined the Commissariat Department, which deals with the military accounts, as a clerk at Pune. After serving for 14 years, he developed hatredness against the British rule, particularly when his leave to see his ailing mother was sanctioned late and she died. In early 1870s, he joined Aikyavardhani Sabha, that is, the Association for the Promotion of Unity, at Pune, and also actively participated in Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. He was deeply inspired by M.G. Ranade's views on Swadeshi and thus became its ardent practitioner as stated in the Bombay Gazette. He then directed his attention towards revolutionary activities. He became an expert in arms and ammunition. Vasudev Balwant Phadke realized that the motherland can be freed only by overthrowing the British rule from the country, and for this an armed revolt is essential. He openly delivered instigative speeches against the British oppressive policies and by 1878 founded a secret organization to train the youth in the use of arms. He toured different parts of Maharashtra and India for the propagation of his ideas and to understand the geographical conditions of the Western Maharashtra. He had plans raising an armed revolt and destroying the Britishers, but did not receive support from the educated class. So he directed himself to the Ramoshis of Pune and Satara districts and was successful in organizing an army of fighters with them. Later, even the Kolis, Mangs, Kunbis, Dhangars and Chamars joined him to form an army of 300 men. The need of finances was felt at this juncture, and so he approached the Holkars of Indore but was denied help. Finally, he resorted to take the path of dacoity with the help of the Ramoshis. It was thenceforth that Vasudev conducted numerous raids on moneylenders and rich persons belonging to Pune town and adjoining districts. He struck terror amongst sahukars and moneylenders as he burnt their account records after the loot. Looking at the activities of Vasudev Balwant Phadke, the British declared a revolt for his capture, but when they realized the seriousness and political importance of Vasudev's aim, they soon took steps to crush his rebellion in March 1879. But wandering in disguise, he gathered the support of the villagers and recruited them. His plan of looting the government treasury in order to raise a force of 500 was shattered when he found the Ramoshis' self-interested approach and misappropriation in the collected booty. He then moved to Sholapur, and in the first week of May 1879, Vasudev issued a manifesto against the government denouncing the British economic exploitation of Indians and demanded relief measures for the peasants. He also expressed that if the demand is not fulfilled in response, the British high officials will be put to death. He threatened the British rule of another 1857 revolt. Now, the effect of this challenging manifesto was visible in London newspapers, Lahore Gazette and newspapers of Pune because the blame of the revolt was on the British officials. Vasudev travelled through the Nizam's territory to organize more young men to fight the British power. Thus, the British government was unable to capture him and so announced an award of rupees 3,000 but remained unsuccessful. While the search for Vasudev was on by the government, he, along with his men, crossed Kasara Ghat and went to Konkan. The dacoity from district to district continued and a large booty was collected. The government harassed and persecuted many civilians in Pune, suspecting them as associates of Vasudev Balwant Phadke. The government machinery had failed, and this became the talk of the town amongst the British authorities, and then stringent action was planned to capture Vasudev in mid-July 1879. The government acquired information from the captives and traced Vasudev and finally captured him along with Gopal Moreshwar at midnight fast asleep in the Buddhist cave in the hill area near Devar Navadgi, a few miles from the Nizam's border. He had lots of papers, maps and arms in his possession. They were taken to jail in Pune and were tried in the court for more than 3 months. The session judge sentenced him to transportation of life on 27th November 1879. After confirming the sentence in the Bombay High Court, Vasudev Balwant Phadke was brought to Pune. From Yerwada jail, he was taken to Thane jail and then to Eden on 3rd January 1880 under very difficult conditions. Here, he tried to escape but was captured within 24 hours and was back feeling very helpless because of immense hardships. Finally, he began partial starvation that gradually affected his health and passed away on 17th February 1883. Vasudev Balwant Phadke's spirit of patriotism exhibited his selfless and dare actions to overthrow the British rule from the country. Almost every newspaper of the country carried the news praising Phadke and spelled out his patriotic and unselfish mind. He received great respect from the public, including Europeans, while he was transported from one jail to the other. Unfortunately, it seems that Phadke did not receive the company and support that he should have from intelligentsia of the country, or else the results would have been the other way. The Deccan Star of Pune wrote on 23rd November 1879, quote unquote, "In the eyes of countrymen, Vasudev Balwant Phadke did not commit any wrong. We consider him as the harbinger of a bright future for India." Thus, it must be understood that various events in Western India, such as famines, riots, and gang dacoities, all added to the difficulties of the people. Above all, the British administration led to the discontent that resulted in the rebellion of Phadke. However, Phadke's revolt was different from other risings. It is clear that Phadke's revolt aimed at national freedom rather than individual grievances and also concentrated on arms rebellion towards nationalism. Thus, students, we can say that he sowed the seeds for carrying ahead the freedom struggle in the coming century, and we have seen how India's freedom struggle gained momentum there onwards. Now we move on to the final unrest that was by the peasants. Agriculture in Maharashtra was prosperous during the Maratha period, and the society was predominantly agrarian, resulting into large number of people being peasants. It was explicitly stated by Sir John Malcolm that the people in Maharashtra were devoted agriculturalists and thorough knowledge of agricultural practices. With the advent of the British rule in the Peshwa territories, agriculture was totally neglected and hence suffered. The authorities were only interested in increasing the land revenue and its collection. Up to the mid-19th century, the condition of the peasants was not very good but manageable. Very few were landlords and the rest were tenants and paid rents for the land cultivated by them. There were yet other in rural Maharashtra who were landless farmers and were hired as laborers on the farms. The landless people were involved in paid services of the many Deshmukhs, Deshpandes, Patils, etc., and the poor were treated as domestic servants. The British disbanded the Maratha army, resulting in additional burden on the land resources in the Deccan. Also, the other sources of income and traditional industries like handicrafts too were intentionally destroyed by the British government. Thus, it can be said that the condition of the peasantry rapidly deteriorated due to the disinterest of the administration. The British introduced the Ryotwari system of land revenue, under which the government took control of the land as zamindars and made land settlement with individual occupants, and the peasants remained mere tenants. Under Elphinstone as the commissioner of the Deccan, discretionary powers were vested with the revenue officials but resulted unproductive. The peasants suffered due to scarcity of rain, as it destroyed the crop, and reduced the prices of food grains led to greater difficulties for the peasants. The system also led to the decline in the revenues of the state. Besides this, what also affected the agriculturist was the rising burden on agricultural land, rise in land revenue, and competition with foreign machine-made goods. The peasants were unable to pay the taxes, resulting into indebtedness and misery of the farmers. Thus, reasons were many that added to the plight of the peasants, such as commercialization of agriculture, hike in taxes, exploitation by moneylenders, and frequent outbreaks of famine and epidemic. The British administration was seriously considering the formulation of a new revenue system and method of collecting revenue, as the earlier system had noticed decline in agriculture and also damaged the revenue resources of the country. The changes in mode of land assessment also did not bring benefits to the administrators, and so a modified system was to be introduced. In this, the land revenue was kept lower than in the earlier system. This helped the farmers to bring in more and more land under cultivation. According to scholars, the reasons for rapid expansion of agriculture and prosperity in 1860 was mainly due to high prices of agricultural commodities, and it led to the general increase in total cultivable land. Bombay Presidency recorded a 30% increase in cultivable area in the decade of 1860s. The enormous rise in the price of cotton was due to the American blockade during Civil War. With the end of the Civil War, the country again went into severe economic crisis. Though this prosperity ended the earlier economic depression, but did not remain for a longer time. Expansion of agriculture improved the economic situation of the Deccan. However, the Deccan peasantry remained deeply sunk in indebtedness. The new market forces led to the dependence of peasants on moneylenders. Same was the case with Ahmednagar district. The situation in northern Maharashtra, particularly in Khandesh, was similar. The reports of 1863 state that the ryots had not gained much due to rise in cotton prices, but the native merchants were the actual gainers. Thus, the new land revenue system made mobile both the land and the peasants, and left the way open for the growth in power of the moneylenders and the absentee landlords. Though there was prosperity in 1850s and 60s, the period of 1870s brought in severe depression, leaving the peasants impoverished. The harassed peasants fell into the clutches of the moneylenders, never to be free man again. The discontent among the peasants led to the outbreak of riots in 1875. According to R.C. Majumdar, Marwaris were into a lucrative business of lending money at a very high rate of interest. The government of India appointed a commission to conduct an inquiry into the Deccan riots. In its report, the commission estimated that about 1/3 of the occupants of the government land were burdened with debts which averaged 18 times their annual assessment. Some unscrupulous saukars or moneylenders even went to the extent of inducing and compelling the debt peasants, mostly the Kunbis, to compromise the honor of their females to get relief from the crushing debts. This angered the peasants, and they outburst their anger against the moneylenders in the form of violent action in the village of Sirur Taluka of Pune Collectorate. The moneylenders were forced to flee the village. The violence also spread in other areas of Pune Collectorate, and the immediate police action, many peasants were arrested. However, according to Majumdar, no severe crime such as murder occurred during the Deccan riots. The aim of the rioters was to obtain the bonds, decree, etc. in order to destroy them. Adding to the woes of the peasants was the widespread famine that lasted from 1876 to 1877, that is for more than a year, leaving them devastated. Another severe calamity that occurred was the rat plague that threatened the crops in about 8 collectorates of Bombay Presidency. Heavy rains and cold did help in the destruction of the rats, but left behind epidemics of malaria, causing prolonged distress in the Deccan. The last decade saw some prosperity in agriculture and improvement in the condition of the people. But unfortunately, again, twice famine occurred in 1896-97 and 1899 and 1900. The severe calamities, one after the other, completely retarded the progress of the people of Deccan region. However, no efforts were visible from the government side till the beginning of the 20th century. The new land revenue system created an exploiting class of landlords and moneylenders who harassed the peasants, and hence the peasants were forced to resort to revolt. The absentee landlords and moneylenders were not keen in investing for the development of agriculture and only looked towards benefiting from surplus agriculture. This led to total destruction of agriculture set up in the country. To conclude, I must say the advent of British rule in India led to the origin and growth of many problems for the Indian agrarian society. The British policies towards the peasants depressed and disturbed them as well as destroyed the village industry. The peasants became landless and jobless, and this led to their resistance and insurrection against the government. The tribal communities of Maharashtra, such as Ramoshis, Bhils and Kolis, were severely affected by this and therefore rose in revolt against the British government. The British rule had been always using the policy of divide and rule. It has used Indian against Indian in their struggle in suppressing various insurrections in India. In this case too, they formed the Bhil Corps and sent them against the Bhil tribes. On another occasion, they raised a corps of Kolis and used them against Bhils. Also, struggle by Vasudev Balwant Phadke is remarkable and noteworthy as he focused on the freedom of the country selflessly. The British faced great difficulty in suppressing the insurgency. With this, I conclude the topic. Students, there are a couple of questions which you need to look into. Firstly, examine the insurrection of the Ramoshis, Kolis and the Bhils in Maharashtra and state its consequences, wherein you will be describing the reasons for the insurrections and how the Ramoshis, Kolis and the Bhils fought against the suppressive and oppressive rule of the Britishers. Also, you will be dealing with what was the impact of this revolt on the villagers, on the society, as well as on the Britishers. The second question deals with Vasudev Balwant Phadke's contribution is remarkable, wherein the Britishers were also threatened by his activities. After large struggle of finding support, he at last resorted to the revolt. Third question deals with the conditions that led to the peasants' unrest in Maharashtra. The students need to discuss here the conditions in which the peasants were surviving. The conditions were very difficult for the peasants as far as industries were concerned, as far as agriculture was concerned, and therefore they were very unhappy with the policies of the government. So we need to discuss here what difficulties did the peasants face due to the policies of the Britishers, and also along with that the natural calamities which distracted and disturbed the lifestyle of the peasants. These are some of the questions which you will be dealing with, and to add more to the content, I would like you to go through a couple of references which will help you to develop your answers from your examination point of view. Some of the references which you can look at are Economic Life in Bombay Deccan by R.D. Choksi. This gives you the whole economic setup of the Bombay Deccan, where you can search for the peasantry, where you can search for the agricultural development, where you can look at the British policies related to agriculture and development. The second book you can refer to is The British Paramountcy and Indian Renaissance by R.C. Majumdar. Another very interesting and informative book is by Ravindra Kumar, titled as Western India in the 19th Century. A very, very exhaustive book which gives you a detailed information about all these uprisings is by B.R. Sunthankar, titled as 19th Century History of Maharashtra, Volume 1. The next reference is titled as the book by Eric Stokes, titled as English Utilitarians and India. Another book which deals with the labour and land in India during the British rule is by Thorner, David and Alice. This helps us in understanding the problems of the land and the labour. So these are few of the suggestive references which you students need to refer to, and which also will give you a feel of the reading and connecting your topic from the examination point of view also. Thank you.